Welcome to the Long Take Review, where four college professors talk film, providing insight, not assigning homework. I'm your host, Jen Bankard, and I'm here with three men and a baby. The baby's the podcast. First, sorry. First, he's not going to say what time it is. It's PT McNiff. How's it going, PT?
Welcome to Subterranea. Please wipe your feet. Just kidding. It's literally all dirt. I'm doing well, Jen. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thank you for reminding me of that part of the movie we're going to talk about. And he loves space. He loves women. It's Greg Cass. How's it going, Greg?
I don't tell you how to drive the ship. Don't tell me how to kill sexy aliens. I'm good, Jen. I'm very excited. Hey, it's worth celebrating. We're talking about a movie that usually it's a type of movie we get abandoned by our two co-hosts, and we have the full crew today. So that's very exciting. Spoiler that you're about to introduce somebody else.
Yes, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And last but not least, he's the smartest man on earth, and he's going to baby-proof the world. It's Antonio Elifato. How are you doing, Antonio?
He has always been a rock. Greg is Greg, and I am right here. Whatever life throws at us, we'll face it together as a family. I'm doing great, Jen. Happy to be here.
Perfect. I love it. So, listeners, if you haven't figured it out already, those were all references to the film we are here to review today, The Fantastic Four First Steps, which is, in case you lived under a rock, the latest MCU film out in theaters now. Sorry, PT just put in the chat, Jen is Reed the correct answer. I don't know.
I was speculating before we recorded. We all the men thought they were Reed Richards because out of the four of us, but it's Jen, and that was so Antonio really guided us correctly.
I love it. So this film is directed by Matt Shakman, who previously was the showrunner for the Marvel Disney Plus series WandaVision, and this is the fourth Fantastic Four film made since 2005. So we've been around the block with these characters a little bit in the past on the big screen. But this version stars Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and Ebon Moss-Bacharach as astronauts who return to Earth with superpowers, must defend Earth from the planet-eating Galactus while welcoming a new member of their family into the world. That is my lame attempt at a spoiler-free description of this movie. If you are listening to us for the first time, we will have a spoiler-free section designed for those who have not yet seen this film, and then with a very clear alert, we will shift into spoiler mode for the rest of the show. PT, if listeners think we're fantastic after listening to this episode, what can they do?
If you want to know if the board is part of our bodies, then you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. We host the Long Take Review on Jen's Substack at thelongtake.substack.com, but you can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, YouTube, and many more. You can also check us out on social media. We are on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at the Long Take Review. We're also on Letterboxd. The account is at LTRpod, or you can search for the hashtag LTRpod to see what each of us individually has been watching. Jen?
Thanks, PT. So as always, we're going to start with the short take. What was your general reaction to the Fantastic Four First Steps? I think Greg gets first crack because he, along next to me, has been on Marvel Island for some time now. Forever true.
Yeah, I'm still on Marvel Island. So I thought this was a ton of fun. I find myself stuck in Marvel discourse more often than I'd like to be. And I really wish I could walk into a theater with none of that in my head. So it was very hard to kind of walk into this knowing that it's kind of a grand reboot moment. It's the start of a new phase. It's, starting a process that leads to Avengers movies that are hopefully going to bring, all sorts of strands together and all that kind of game. But trying to think about this is just like, hey, I walked into a movie, I saw some good characters and had a good time. I think it was a success. And I would say, more to come later, but I would say the success is that, they cast good actors and gave them some things to do. Maybe not enough at times, but After having watched a couple of recent Marvel movies, I'm looking at you, February's Captain America, Brave New World, where the actors were fantastic but giving nothing. This felt like a good course correction in that the script was a little stronger. But I look forward to talking about it in the larger Marvel discourse as well. Antonio, up until you were scheduled for this podcast, I didn't know you'd ever seen a Marvel movie before. Because that's insane. It'd be like if somebody hadn't seen an Indiana Jones movie before. So tell us, what's your relationship to Marvel, and how did you feel about this movie?
Sorry, I'm contractually obligated now. Go ahead.
No, of course. I stayed with Marvel through Avengers Infinity War, and then somewhere around like Ant-Man and the Quantumania, that kind of stuff. And a lot of the television content I fell off. It was too much. It was overwhelming, and it was too variable in terms of what I was getting. So yeah, I'd sort of fallen off for a while, but due to some prodding from my two young sons, I came back for, as Greg alluded to, the thoroughly forgettable Captain America: Brave New World, but then the lively and invigorating Thunderbolts, which I enjoyed quite a bit. I would place this movie between those two films in terms of quality, but closer, honestly, to Thunderbolts than to Captain America. For me, for a cinematic universe to justify being a universe, it has to be populated by distinct constituents, like characters that don't feel the same and movies that have their own unique ethos and aesthetic. So Fantastic Four, for me, while I don't know, it was like a great superhero movie for reasons I'll get into later, at least it was a distinctive one, and it introduced its sort of throwback characters in a way that felt right for the moment, which, given the history of adaptations for the source material, feels like a success. So overall, I had a pretty good time, and my kids definitely had a really great time, and it was really their kind of introduction to this world. So I think it was successful in those ways, but it didn't reach the heights of sort of like classic Marvel for me. PT, what were your thoughts?
It was absolutely fine. Jen? No, I could say a little more. I agree with what both of you are saying in that it was good and I had a good time. It's boring, and I think it's cliche to say Marvel has lost a step. I don't think it applies here. And I have to acknowledge that this movie came out 10 years ago. I think I would have liked it a lot more. I might have been in love with it. All the pieces of it logically add up to something I should connect with and enjoy, but I didn't. I just felt like I forgot it within an hour of leaving the theater. Finding quotes for it for opening was like sifting through half-scribbled notes from a dream I had once. To be clear, it's not bad. It just didn't do much for me. And without making it about me, the reason I'm joining this episode with our Marvel Island residents is to try to figure out why I'm so disconnected from these and what, to what degree the problem is just me and life and I'm growing older and things have moved on and I've seen enough of them and whatever. And the degree to which the problem is something within the sort of the movies and the franchise themselves. So, all of that is to say nothing particularly bad about the movie. It was fine. Jen, who liked it a lot, I think.
I thought it was more than fine. I really enjoyed this. And part of it is because it is, coming at me with things that I can't resist. And so one of those things is the sort of retro futurism, aesthetic and style of it. Everything is styled like it's from the 60s and has kind of like a wholesomeness and just the really, I think, captures the essence of kind of what that era or like that vibe is about really well. And so I was already kind of won over by that. And then the other part of it, this is actually a lot more of a parenthood movie than I would have expected. And that part of it, like, in a way that I mildly resented, really, really got to me. Like, I was like bawling in the final scenes of this movie. It was bad. Even though my brain knew, like what was going to happen. I still got really upset about what could happen, if that makes sense. But in our opening, I joked 3 men and a baby, but I do feel like there's a lot of this movie that kind of is in that, has that ethos to it of like, isn't parenthood awkward and difficult, but also great and funny and heartwarming, and you know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of that stuff really worked for me. And the cast too. Like, I do think I don't know. I'm gonna push back on what Greg said about the screenplay a little bit. I do feel like the screenplay, and part of this was when I went to go look for quotes. Like, I remembered a bunch, but then I was like, oh, like I want to see if there are other options. And the screenplay just on its own, I feel like is actually not that strong. It's okay, but it's not like, you know, the most sophisticated piece of writing. But I do think that this
I did not say that. I mean,
no, you didn't say that. You didn't say that either. You didn't say that either. But yeah, everything's
adapted
relative.
Screenplay. Great. This is the Fantastic Four of all time.
Everything's relative. But you know what I mean? Like, I think I realized when I looked at just the quotes that I was like, oh, like these words by themselves actually aren't really that special. But I think the delivery of a lot of the lines only worked because the cast was so strong. You know, I get like either these performances and these characterizations provided by these performances either work for you or they don't. Like, I've heard lots of critics really complain, in particular about Pedro Pascal. Poor Pedro Pascal, leave him alone. He's just doing his job. Like, but I do think that for me, it really worked. And I really liked them as a team, as a family. So yeah, it's not a perfect movie. It's not like an all-timer MCU movie even, but I really enjoyed it. I think it's time for the recommendation algorithm in which we establish the audience of a film. So how are we, you know, with a Marvel movie, we always have to ask, is this for the fans, the hardcore fans, or can anybody watch this? Like where is this movie landing on that spectrum in terms of the no home, like, do you need to know about the MCU?
I mean, I think not. I mean, it's in the title, the first steps. So I think you absolutely don't have to have any familiarity and you can be okay. What do you all think?
That's an achievement. Like, I think one of the main complaints people had about many of the I mean, Thunderbolts was awesome and you could walk in not knowing those characters, but if you actually wanted to do all the homework, you had to watch like 4 TV shows to know who was in that space. So I do think it's kind of an achievement for Marvel to set all that aside. And you know, it may be a case of that's what people are asking for, and now they don't like it now that they got it in some cases, right? You know, my ongoing theory about Marvel is that a whole bunch of people got invested during the pandemic when they were sitting at home and could suddenly watch 24 movies. And then everything since then has felt much more loose in its connections. And that's really frustrated a lot of those people who are like, no, you said I have to watch everything. So why hasn't Shang-Chi showed up again, or Morris, the animal from that movie, or what have you? So I think it's an achievement and interesting to think about whether people want it or not. I mean, it seems at this point people are in on superheroes or out on superheroes. So if you're still in, or you know, it was only the baggage that was turning you off, then fine. My favorite awkward social media thing is the person I saw who just said Fantastic Four totally ripped off The Incredibles. That's so stupid. You know, if you love The Incredibles, please know this is kind of the source of that material and where a lot of the aesthetic and the kind of family as superhero dynamic comes from. So that's my if you love The Incredibles, then you'll love Fantastic Four.
Yeah, I agree with the Incredibles reference, obviously. And I also agree this is the anti-homework Marvel movie. I mean, this was designed that way. I know that because there's been 2 other Fantastic Four movies since 2005, not counting the unreleased movie from the 90s, which is a whole other conversation to get into, that they wanted to add a subtitle to differentiate it in the algorithms and SRO. But it is also kind of like Antonio said, it's the first steps. You can just start here and don't worry about it. And I think that's good. I think that's, you know, a successful element to it. The only other thing I can add in terms of the recommendation thing is, to me, it felt not as prominent as I thought it would be, but the retro futurism, if you like those sort of 50s and 60s Disney cartoons, the Tomorrowland vibes of the theme parks, of like, here's what the year 2000 will look like, then, you can get that here. Like there is something to that. I think that was prominent in the advertising for this, but in case you somehow missed that, and that is something that you really like, that is something that you can connect with without feeling like, oh, I got to watch a dozen movies and 5 seasons of TV shows. Like, no, you can just come in and watch this and get that enjoyment out of it.
Shout out to the Carousel of Progress.
Yes.
It's a deep cut Disney ride. It was the best.
It was the best. I just want to add, because I don't know if I'll squeeze it in later, it cracks me up when a movie wants to be in a parallel universe, but also has to do product placement. So it's like a weird quasi-futuristic place, but don't worry, they still have Little Caesars. You're good. Like, they'll deliver. It's like, oh, really? So, anyway.
Should have been Big Caesars.
Medium Caesars?
Average size Caesars.
So the only wrinkle to kind of what we're I think all agreeing on in terms of like, oh, this is a first steps, like you can just jump in. It does, like Superman, kind of assume that you know the basic premise of the Fantastic Four. I think because it does a similar thing where it kind of like just jumps into like they've already been established. This is not an origin story. You know what I mean? Like, or we get like a montage equivalent of the origin story really, really fast. So I don't know. Do you agree with that? It's hard for me to tell because I already was familiar with the characters. So it's hard for me to pretend like I didn't.
Right. I wonder if that was fast for people who are like, wait, who are these people? Like, what's going on? I guess I had assumed the Fantastic Four ripped off The Incredibles was always a joke, but I could see it being like, oh my God, like, it like the light sketch of it all does feel very sort of pro forma of like the kind of powers, like this guy's strong, this guy's fire, this person's invisible, this person is stretchy. But I think that worked. That was better, in the same way that when they introduced Tom Holland's Spider-Man, it was like, we don't need to see poor Uncle Ben dead on the street again. We can just get him doing a summary of with great power comes great responsibility. And that worked out really well. That they're trying that again. I haven't heard anyone complain, I guess, but I haven't heard from anybody who doesn't already know who the Fantastic Four are. So maybe there are pockets of people who felt lost.
Kevin Feige gave a big ranging interview to a big group of journalists, and he complimented Superman's kind of no hold bar, like, look, I'm not going to explain to you who Mr. Terrific is. It doesn't matter. Like, you'll figure it out by the end of the movie. So it was interesting that, clearly he'd already signed off on the cut of this movie by then, but I almost wonder if they had a little bigger window, they might have pushed it a little further. But I thought it was totally fine. I mean, the like TV talk show montage catching you up, I feel like is very common in television. And I think anyway, I've watched 1 or 2 TV shows and movies by now that I think people know, and I can't imagine anybody being lost in it. Unless somebody's saying like, where's Michael Chiklis? I thought Chiklis was in this.
The commish.
So the other factor that has sort of emerged since this movie came out, because we are recording this a couple weeks after, right? Is that apparently after opening weekend, nobody went to go see this movie. The drop off for the box office was pretty bad. It made a lot of headlines. I think it was, I saw 80%. I think another article that I saw afterwards said like 6 tried to backpedal and was like, oh, it's 67 or something like that. So, but still, either way, I think even the most generous percentage, I think is still pretty bad. Considering how big this movie was supposed to be. Why do we think that is? Like, do we just think, is it the superhero fatigue? Is it just that people were busy, living their lives and doing other things? Like why do we think this didn't have legs?
I think part of advertising yourself as an introduction is risking announcing yourself, especially in the Marvel universe, as inessential and as basically like a herald of like something bigger to come. I don't remember what phase of Marvel we're in, but it's not one. and to bill yourself as a beginning in a franchise that has built its reputation, again, on building toward a bigger, better end, means that interest is going to wane a little bit, and viewers may choose to wait and trust that they can catch up because they're already accustomed to playing catch up with so much Marvel content. Like, I didn't know a lot of the characters in Thunderbolts. I was fine and still really enjoyed that movie. I sort of thought, like, looked back maybe a little bit at the sort of, but like it didn't diminish my my enjoyment of that film. But the reason I went to that film was because you all told me it was really good and I believed you. And so maybe it has something to do with word of mouth too after that first week, but I think that's part of it, is just this sort of feeling that I'll come back when, like, the Avengers return or something.
I do think there's a bunch of things happening all at once that maybe is just the superhero boom is over in terms of it being so central, an agreed upon central remaining piece of monoculture in society. I think, maybe that's just cracked over time. But I think that everything Antonio's saying is right, that it's like, well, this is the start, then I guess it's not that important. I think there is a degree of like within superhero fandom and comic book readers of like, well, the Fantastic Four are really important. They're the first family of Marvel. Like, we have to care about them. And for other people, they're just kind of like, I guess they're just 4 more superheroes and they kind of look like superheroes I've seen before, but it's also like not our Earth because it looks like the future in the past. What? So like, it maybe didn't feel as essential in and of itself, even though it seems so essential for people who care about these stories. And, I also think the fact of like, well, it's going to be on Disney Plus in like 3 months or 4 months. Like, I'll catch up I just caught up to Captain America. I didn't actually, but someone could have just caught up with Captain America, Brave New World, because it appeared on there. And then they'll like, yeah, and Thunderbolts will be around soon. I'll get to Fantastic Four when it shows up sometime in the fall. It's not as crucial for me to go out and see this. So yeah, it's interesting that it does feel like this is, plus there's all the general, like, even if it's called First Steps and they kept saying you don't need to do homework, they're like, nah, you always say that. And there's like 5 seasons of television I should have seen. And there's like a couple of other movies you're referencing. And that's not true this time. But I think maybe the fact that it's been like that for so long has somewhat like created this weird thing of all the fans went out and saw it right away. And then they're all just waiting for it to get to streaming. And yeah, it didn't go anywhere. Because after that first weekend, people were like, Fantastic Four, it's doing great, successful. This is going to be good. And then it just kind of, it disappeared. I was looking at the numbers, the Box Office Mojo off-brand, not owned by a major conglomerate yet version. And they have the like projection spread on the chart. And it is like, usually when it's like the movie didn't do very well, it's in the bottom third. Fantastic Four is under the projection. Like it's so off. It's like $30,000 under the projection of where they thought it was going to be. So I think it maybe it's a victim of its own success, the MCU, and people have recalibrated how they're going to take this stuff in. And the fans are still there, and the fans will make these movies successful. And I think that's fine. But the days of being able to bank on, well, this is a big Marvel movie, it's going to make $1 billion, are over.
So I don't really have anything to quibble with of what's been said. I do think, it's the exact same trend we're seeing with Pixar, where Pixar movies are kind of crashing. Elemental went on to do pretty well because it had long legs, but I don't think Elio did any business this summer. I mean, and I think people just are used to, well, Pixar is what I put on Disney Plus to, get a half hour of sanity or an hour and a half of sanity where my kids are home. And I think Marvel has suffered from that. And that is exactly what PT's saying, but it's like, it's just spread. What's interesting is Star Wars would be the third leg of that stool, but Star Wars hasn't been in theaters other than old movies that everybody loves. So it'll be really curious next May to see if that has also weakened the brand, which what a weird legacy of streaming that will be if all of these used to be movie brands just really aren't sustainable anymore. And the only other piece I'll contribute is to say, I think the way in which these are marketed as you got to see it first before anybody else spoils it really inflates that first weekend so that it's a bigger share of your overall audience. I mean, I think it was Deadpool and Wolverine. I think the social media on Marvel started spoilering some of those major cameos on that Monday. Like, so they created the culture of if you don't go between Thursday and Sunday, then you're not great enough. And as both PT and Antonio said, if the audience is much smaller, then great, you did a wonderful job getting them all there that weekend, but you haven't created something so lasting that people want to see it over and over and over again. I will say, my son, we saw it the second weekend for the second time. I offered him Bad Guys 2 with him and his sister, or Fantastic Four for the second time, just he and I, and he went for Fantastic Four. So the little sister variable there may be the deciding factor, but he had a great time. Just like Antonio said, like his boys loved it. Like my son, we got him the Marvel Unlimited, and he was just away with his grandparents for a week and spent the whole time reading Fantastic Four back issues. And he's like, "Don't worry, Dad. There's 416. I've already knocked out 65 of them. I'm gonna get them all." And like, that's all my little nerd heart wants. So I think it's a success in my book, and maybe my grade is inflated for those reasons.
That's an achievement in parenting. That's great. The only other thing I'll add real quick is just that I think Superman beat Fantastic Four to the punch. And I think both the timing and the success of Superman, I think, made it so that Fantastic Four didn't have as much of a chance. And so I think people were like, "Oh, like we like Superman. Do I really need to go see this other superhero movie now?" You know what I mean? Like, so interesting how the timing of the release dates could have potentially impacted it too. Or people are just like, "Oh, DC is new for real. Like this seems really different than what we've gotten before." Whereas Marvel, the big complaint I've heard about this movie is that sure, it's a little bit different and it's kind of starting over or whatever, but at the same time, it feels mostly like what we've gotten before. So I think maybe that's just the novelty of the MCU. Maybe has worn off for a lot of people. But
I also think there's big names in the comic book world, and even in like thinking of pop culture, and X-Men, Fantastic Four are certainly there. But then there's like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, I think are the three that are like your grandparents will know about them. Like they'll be like, yeah, I've heard of them. I don't know anything about them. I've never read a comic book. I've never watched a movie, but I know that they exist. So I think that there being a Superman movie that is also a restart, also a kick, but it is also just like this prominent character that people are, there's gonna be more people just inherently interested in that. But it is interesting. I was considering what would it have been like if Fantastic Four came out a month before Superman instead of vice versa, or whatever it was, 2 or 3 weeks. I still think Superman would have won, but I don't think it's because I love Superman, that movie, so much. But I think that character is just got something that
I was gonna say everybody else out in the world likes Superman. It's just you three.
I mean, I do like Superman, and I do like Superman more than this movie. I like James Gunn Superman more than this Fantastic Four movie. But I don't, I think that it's separate from that. The movies could have been equally good, and many people may think that they are equally good. And I think Superman would have made a lot more money because it's Superman.
Fair enough. All right. So I think we're ready for spoiler mode. So if you have not seen Fantastic Four First Steps and you do not want it spoiled, although as Greg pointed out, it's probably already been spoiled to a degree because of social media. But, if you want to wait until you've seen the movie, go see it and then rejoin us for the rest of the conversation. All right, so the thing I wanted to start with today is I did allude to this in my short take a little bit, but is to the cast of this, because I do think that seems to be where, if critics are divided, that does seem to be the point of division mostly, is like whether or not they think that these actors are well cast for these roles, and if they are actually doing anything worth that do it. Because I think I've heard a lot of like, I like all these actors, but in this movie they're really falling flat and not doing anything, or they don't have enough to do or whatever. So let's start with that. Do you think that these 4 actors in these 4 roles worked?
I don't think the problem was the actors. I think it is that they're sort of set up as we're a family. We're kind of cracking jokes on each other, and that Reed is kind of like worried all the time, and I think that's fine. I think that's the main thing. People, at least what I have heard, is the people who are like, I don't like Pedro Pascal because that's not who Reed Richards is. He's supposed to be much more in the Tony Stark, Stephen Strange mold of like a smart guy who's kind of out there thinking he's better than everyone else. But I like that they changed that because we already have two of those guys in the MCU, so whatever. But everyone else, they're kind of cracking jokes and it's kind of supposed to be funny, and that's kind of working okay. But then pretty soon into this, it's like, well, the world's about to end. So like, let's go do that. Let's go take care of that. Oh, but the world's about to end, and the only option is you have to sacrifice your unborn baby to this. And it's like the stakes immediately get like personal and high, which is in theory good, but I think that stops them from allowing the characters to be fun because they have to focus on what's happening in the story. And so I think that mitigates what we might be able to get. And like the little hints of like, oh, maybe there is something we can still have fun, all look like plot lines that got cut because they didn't want this to be too long of a movie. So there's all these little strands of stories that are nipped off that look like it's where those characters would get to stretch their wings. So
you're just mad that we didn't get much Mole Man.
I'm mad we didn't get much more Natasha Lyonne, who at this point shouldn't even be in the movie. If we're going to get that little, just take her out and save her for another time. Yeah. That's where I'm really mad. And I think that's where we would have gotten stuff of The Thing, which is an actual sentence and not the nonsense it sounded like. But we would have gotten more character work from The Thing if we had gotten time with Natasha Lyonne. But we didn't. And so instead, he's kind of just a guy who doesn't want to say his tagline.
I agree with PT. I don't fault the actors at all. I think the actors do great work. But Vanessa Kirby for me was like had the most to do and seemed, and I think going in, I considered her probably the most talented performer of the four. But it's almost as if like Vanessa Kirby and Pedro Pascal are sort of like in a different movie because like what they have to do as like the parents of this unborn child and then born child is really lean into sort of like their dramatic chops. And Joseph Quinn and Ebon Moss-Bacharach are there for comic relief for a lot of the movie, right? Like there were a lot of jokes about, Human Torch's crush on the Silver Surfer that, were fine or whatever. But given the sort of central plot of what was going on, I think it's difficult to, as PT said, to sort of like develop a full arc of a character in the shadow of that being the main engine of the plot. So it sort of naturally happened based on the plot that two characters in particular I have a pretty good grasp on, and they had more development and more evolution through the course of the movie because they just had more to grapple with. Whereas the other two were left sort of off to the side. And presumably I'll know more about them in a later movie. But so I get the complaints, but again, I definitely don't blame the actors.
Man, I got actively mad that Natasha Lyonne was barely in the movie because I actually didn't know she was in the movie at all. So when they first show her, I got super excited because I love her so much, and then I was like, wait a minute, that's it? Like what is she even doing in this movie? Like, like her character, like it's like really unexplained what her character's like why she is in this movie. So. Yeah, I totally hear you. There's the editing clearly like destroyed a bunch of this movie.
I just want to say it's bullshit because that's her tagline, but I don't want to guess the explicit tag. Yes. So part of my son's love of this is that he and I went back and we watched, we didn't watch the more recent one, but we watched the two with Chris Evans because he likes Captain America. And so, And what's really striking is the Thing and the Human Torch are really antagonistic to each other in the kind of, Star-Lord and Tony Stark, two alphas in the same space kind of way. And I thought then it became clear to me that in this movie they really wanted to swerve away from that, right? And so those two characters are buddy throughout, and there's the scene where they're kind of laying around hanging out around his room together, just being dudes, hanging out, good times, much like this podcast when we kick Jen off.
It has never happened.
Before Jen arrives to the recording, we're just dudes hanging out, wondering where Jen will just pop in. So I do think that was a deliberate choice. I will say I completely agree that Vanessa Kirby was the strong standout. And Antonio quoted in the opening my favorite Sue Storm speech, which I believe is only in the trailer. It's really good and has been, I've heard it 1,700 times this summer going to all the movies I do. And then I was like, oh, I wonder where that was in the movie, right? Like where is the moment where she could kind of pick up the team and get them together? I thought was a shame. And then I will make the joke everybody else on the internet made and said, if you've seen Vanessa Kirby's Pieces of a Woman, where they were showing the most traumatic birth scene ever, and then they're like, you know what, let's just do it in space. That'd be awesome. Let's just go for it, which is very funny. But that whole sequence worked for me. I thought there was good danger. Of course, having been present at childbirth, I have a lot of questions about fluids in 0G, but we'll just leave them all to comic book. If I can accept Padme has a baby under a metal skirt without really trying, I can accept Fantastic Four's birth scene as well. The weak link for me, and this is where I again point out, I don't like television, and I think Stranger Things is so effing overrated. Joseph Quinn did not work for me. He doesn't have the charisma of those other three, and the Human Torch should be the most charismatic of the four. He should, when Vanessa Kirby says early on, oh, he's single, and he has a crush on the Silver Surfer, all the quotes we used earlier. I was like, this guy, I don't know. So I didn't like him in Stranger Things. I did not understand why people got obsessed with that character and his ending in Stranger Things. Why am I still watching that show so much, considering how little I like it? But, I am. So he was the weak link for me. Ebon Moss-Bacharach, they really needed to skip the tasting the sauce joke, because it was I've watched this all summer. I don't need this here. And I don't think they were really playing on the bear, but they were also not playing on the bear. So I like him in general. He looked weird without his beard in the flashbacks, but I didn't want that kind of joke.
But if the movie had 20 more jokes sprinkled throughout, it would have been oh, sure, that's funny. That's referencing, a thing that he kind of did. But it did kind of feel like they were because it was in the trailers and because it's in the movie, kind of thought they were this is our money shot. This is, oh my God, this is the killer line. This is so funny. He's just on the show. He's tasting the thing and he claps his hands, but it's him as CGI. Get it? And it was yeah, oh, okay. And it's also, again, there's only a small window of time where we can have fun with them, because the parent, we're just finding out about, we're having a baby, couple are nervous, and those two guys are they don't have a care at that moment. That's the only time in the movie that these characters don't have a care. So I just wish it was more fun.
Jen, can I throw it over to you to react to the cast in general? But then you are our cute sidekick correspondent. Herbie. Did Herbie work for you, or was he a CGI monstrosity of the likes of Crypto, the non-existent dog that still haunts my nightmares?
I thought Herbie was delightful. He was very, very Jetsons to me. Which, if you want to read a ton of unnecessary thoughts I have about the Jetsons and this movie, you can go read my review of it. That's mostly what it's about. But yeah, I liked that Herbie was just Rosie on the Jetsons, where he's just doing all the domestic chores, and the bit where he's putting together the crib and then Sue's wait a minute, That's not your job. You're not you're not the father of my baby, Herbie. Like he was an essential component, I feel like, to establish that it wasn't just retro and that it was retro futuristic. You know what I mean? Like think about removing him from the movie and then all of a sudden it's just like they're just in 60s clothes probably. So I don't know. In general, so like I do enjoy Joseph Quinn. I liked him in Stranger Things. I like Stranger Things. These takes from Greg are really wild to me. But I thought he was really funny and charming in this. And I really liked that he was kind of like didn't know how to feel about Silver Surfer. Like he had to work through his feelings about like, well, like I'm fighting you, but I also like you. And then clearly he is sort of feels inadequate or he wants to prove himself to Reed. And I like that they gave him like a linguistic side project in the movie. I thought that was really fun. Like gave me Stargate vibes where he's like, I've cracked the code of their language. So I don't know. I thought he was actually quite charming and honestly like had to carry a lot of the movie. Like I would actually rank in terms of screen time importance or like weight as characters. I feel like it's Sue Storm and then Johnny, like, and then Reed and then like lots of space and then Ben. Like, in terms of how much they mattered to the story, you know.
Where's Herbie in relation to Ben? Is Herbie over Ben?
I think Herbie's above Ben, probably. No. Herbie does more than Ben in this movie.
I will say, to augment it, but to say it in a meaner way, I will say Johnny Storm's the only one of the four who has an arc. Like he's the only one who develops and learns. I mean, I think Sue is prominent, but I don't think Sue like changes. I think she's just like, you know, her principles remain her principles, which I don't think is a problem necessarily. But like he's the one who's like, you know, at least in theory, he's pushing against like, well, here's my box. I'm in this, like, I'm the guy, like I'm the cute one and I'm the hothead or whatever. And I'm going to actually do the smart thing. Like I'm going to do the Reed Richards like corner. I'm going to go over there and do that. Cause like people think I can't do that. There was a degree of like, they were just kind of telling us that, like there was no, like, you know, it was interesting that like Joseph Quinn is similar to Skylar Gisondo, in Superman, where it's just sort of like he's the cute one that everyone likes. And it's like, okay, I guess. And it's like, just trust us on that. Like that's who this character is, without necessarily like doing a lot to like establish it so much as just sort of telling us that's what happened. And then going from there. But I will also just note he's great in Gladiator 2, a movie that's really good. And I'm not surprised Jen didn't remember.
I was trying really hard not to bring this up. I mean, the other thing that we have to point out now that you've opened this door is that Pedro Pascal and Joseph Quinn also were both in Gladiator 2. It's a very odd crossover in casting. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Wait, but he's not the one who's in Thelma. Isn't the Thelma grandson?
No, he's the other one. He was the other of the two.
Those two are the emperors. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I like the other one.
Thelma is the best movie of all the ones we're talking about.
Is it Dondas and then Crypto, Greg? Like, is that where we're at right now? In terms of,
I don't even know what Dondas is.
Dondas is the monkey in Gladiator 2.
Oh man, I blocked out the little monkey. That's high. That's like Raiders of the Lost Monkey. Monkey.
I think I forgot about the monkey is still above Crypto in Greg's ranking.
That's how negative it is. Then I take the weird prehistoric monkeys that are less evolved than modern chimpanzees for some reason, or modern baboons. Remember those monkeys in Gladiator?
Mm-hmm.
And then Crypto.
Wow. Okay.
It's
on record now. Anyway, so for the Pedro Pascal thing, briefly, because we haven't really talked about him specifically. So there's this thing called acting, people, where someone portrays a character that has a very different persona than they do in real life or in other roles. And so the fact that Pedro Pascal is very serious and anxious and worried and is like not like his charming, charismatic self that we see on the red carpet, that actually may be a good thing. That's all I'll say.
I think trauma is absolutely overplayed in movies right now, but I liked the fact that Pedro portrayed his guilt about what happened, because that version of Reed wasn't really present in my mind in the other versions of this. Although, again, I did not see the one in the middle that got the guy fired from Star Wars because it was so bad.
It was more his behavior when he was making the movie that got him fired. But the movie,
I thought that was the one Jen had watched because she said it was the Parenthood movie. I was like, no, Michael B. Jordan from Parenthood was in the last Fantastic Four, not this Fantastic Four.
I didn't like that one. That had Miles Teller in it too, right? That was like
he was
a
Reed
moment
Richards,
where it was like, here are all the hot actors of this moment, and then it was a terrible movie. So I just want to defend Pedro Pascal. And I actually really I found it really interesting that they played into the idea that Reed Richards is so smart and therefore can't help but try to control everything. And that it's like almost like an obsessive disorder that he has where he has to run all the numbers and think about all the possibilities and use his power of deduction kind of to feel like he has control. Like it's a psychological problem that he has that he freely admits to his child, right? Saying there's something wrong with me. I don't want you to be like me. There's something wrong with me because I feel like I have to control everything and there has to be ultimate certainty in everything in my life. Right. So I don't know. I thought he also kind of goes on an arc too, because he kind of admits that, like to come to that realization and admit that.
Obviously, I like Pedro Pascal. I went to a music festival this weekend and people were passing out buttons that said Pedro Pascal probably likes, and then had written in the band's name, which like he's clearly having like a cultural moment and everybody really enjoys following him. And it's hard to go from Eddington a week before this movie, I think the way the calendar fell, to this and not appreciate that he has some range. And, Materialist, I think he was kind of flat and, uncharismatic. And that was by design, right? Like that's what you are in a rom-com when spoiler. So, I think I think Pedro Pascal Summer has proved that he has talent and range, though maybe also proved that we're getting a little too much of him, because I do think maybe people were tired of him by the time this came around.
I think part of the issue of the blowback is people only knowing him from nerd properties. So The Mandalorian in a voiceover role / like 5 scenes where he's not wearing a helmet. And then The Last of Us, both of which he's like the unwitting adopted father who's kind of worried about what's happening. And so the fact that he's just like, I'm a father and I don't know what I'm going to do about this, is like, he's just doing the same thing over and over again. A lot of people didn't go and see Eddington, who then went to see Fantastic Four, is what I'm getting at. Is the issue. And they haven't seen his Saturday Night Live performances where he wakes up from the coma and has the weird accent. And it's like, oh, he can do that too. Like, that's fun. And so they are typecasting him because they've only seen him in these sort of few things. And then he's so, he is so prominent and he's sort of out there in interviews, and the 4 of them are out in the interviews. But part of him being on the interviews is also him being like, I'm so nervous to do these performances and I'm so worried about it. And I get anxious. That then when you go see the movie, it's like, oh, Reed Richards, he's worried and anxious and nervous. Is like, I guess that's all this guy can do, is just, complain about how famous he is. Like, I think all that's unfair. I think it's a smart choice in the movie. I think it's a smart choice in the context of the other characters we already have in the MCU. I like Pedro Pascal. I give him the benefit of the doubt. In addition to thinking all those things are true. But I also think, like we were saying earlier, he doesn't really have a lot. He doesn't have as much to play with. Like, he knocks it out of the park in the one scene where he's talking to his baby and is just sort of like, I hope you don't become what I am. I hope you don't have the same issues that I do. Like, I thought that was the emotional crux of the movie to me, was like that scene. Or I think that was the most successful emotional moment and quiet moment of the movie, was him doing that. So, if he's not that character, I don't know if we get to that point.
Does anyone want to give any shout outs to things that they liked? So a favorite scene, moment, action sequence.
You already mentioned the birth scene. The birth scene aligning with the Silver Surfer chase scene was, I thought that was an effective way of sort of like taking 2 scenes we've seen before and putting them in like this weird context where the stakes just kept ratcheting up and up and up. To me, that's the high point of the movie, and it happens pretty early in the movie. But I thought it was really great.
I would agree with that comment and just space it out a little bit more, that I was not expecting like a spaceship zooming through an asteroid field and all of that. Like that was not at all hinted at in the teasers, at least to my knowledge. And so I thought that was really fun. And the wormhole effects with the Silver Surfer who can pass through that all worked really well and was not what I was expecting. I'm really looking forward to when they build the version of Smuggler's Run like this, and they pass out the pilot card and the gunner card. They can pass out the you give birth in the back card, which I hope I get that one, because I just want to give that a try.
I hope you do too, Greg.
I like that. The end sequence, I feel like people who really, really love this are like, it's a amazing kaiju battle thing. We just got a really good version of that with Godzilla -1, and this brought that to mind because it's my most recent kaiju experience, and this pales in comparison, right? Like it didn't totally work. And I hate some of the like, oh, he's falling and he grabs a building, he being Galactus, and he pulls the building down and you kind of see inside the building. I'm like, oh, that's a much better like special effect than I've seen in a while. And I'm sure it like cost a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to create, but it all just kind of became Marvel end of the movie noise. I'm just waiting for whatever gets him to the thing, and then, the end.
I really like how he grabs like a fistful of what to him would be dirt. Like it looks like when my kids are playing in a sandbox and he's just like, oh, what's this? But it's like buildings in his hand. I don't know. I like that part of it.
I appreciate that Greg has already forgotten the kaiju scene from Superman, as he was the least into that. But you did watch kaiju battle not that long ago.
Hey, big guy up here. Yeah, whatever.
I feel very bad now. I agree with Antonio and Greg that the Silver Surfer chasing the ship, like especially when it was like, we made it, we're out, like we're in hyperspace or whatever their version of it is, and then it's like, nope, Silver Surfer can chase you there. Like that was fun, and then combining that with the bird scene, that's the best action sequence of the movie for sure. I also think it paired well with meeting Galactus and being like, oh, we're going this far with Galactus, that's fun. That was interesting, and seeing how it's like he's the planet eater, but he also was just like, he's a little guy in the big planet, but he's little in comparison. He's still much bigger than regular people. All that sequence I thought like was very successful. So I can say all of that so that I don't feel as bad that I'm giving a backhanded compliment to a moment later, which is everything about the end sequence and how I know how we'll do it is we'll move Earth slightly. It's like, that was dumb. And it was just like, okay, whatever. And it was also like, well, that's clearly not going to work because that doesn't make any sense unless, like, is this going to be the thing that opens us up into the regular Marvel universe? But it's too early in the movie for that. So this is clearly not going to work out. But that it was just the Silver Surfer showing up being like, what? No. And just stopping all of the little things they'd set up and all the like sacrifice that like humanity had made to follow this cockamamie plan is just immediately wiped out. I thought that was kind of fun. And it was just like, right, the Silver Surfer is incredibly powerful and strong and is not going to put up with your half-baked idea. Reed Richards. So I liked how that turned out, and I'm choosing to be generous and believe that was an intentional commentary on how that sequence wasn't working. Like 10 minutes they spent being like, we're working on this, was intentionally not very good and not a well conceived in order to be undermined by the Silver Surfer.
That, and I'm sure Jen went the same place I did. That was totally ripped from the Doctor Who 50th anniversary special, right? Like putting a planet in a pocket universe, except it's TARDISes instead of that. But again, I'm more positive on this than at least a couple of you, and yet none of that makes sense. It's like, oh, we put an egg in the middle of these three things, so then if we build these three contraptions all over the world, we can suck in the whole. It just, none of the visuals of it made sense. And if you want that kind of thing to work, you have to make it very clear and easy to follow. And
especially if it's, you're trying to establish the smartest man on Earth, is just like, this isn't very smart, Reed. What are we doing? Like, what's happening?
I have a question. Here is something that was baffling to me, a decision that's pretty central to the plot of the movie in the middle, which is when the Fantastic Four, after they've had their encounter with Galactus, when Sue has the press conference and then she's just like, Galactus gave us a choice, all of you living or my baby. And then that's it, right? And then we have a lot of the movie is sort of like just the world being really upset and saying like, you should have given up the baby and all this. And like, I get that in terms of like the drama of it, but also it's hard to imagine that like this was the plan. Well, just reveal it to like everyone and then whatever. I mean, like, I don't know. Maybe they're like this wholesome, dutiful group, and they exist in a world where like the world can align in concert and like all agree on doing something. So maybe that's part of it. But at the time, I was like, when she said it, I was just like, what? Like, I felt like a press secretary on the West Wing, and like, right? Like, why? But did you all feel the same way, or did you all think that like, no, it's the right thing to do because it's like being truthful, and so and they'll just eat the consequences of it?
I liked the character moment of we will tell you honestly what happened, even though we kind of will know it makes us look bad, that like we wouldn't sacrifice one of ours for all of you. And, with the sort of, we'll figure out some other option. It's like, what is that going to be? I have no idea. Like, I don't know. And that really plays into, I think, the Reed Richards issues. So in that sense, like, I was like, I get it as a character moment, but I also really at no point was I ever like, was I ever convinced they shouldn't just give up the baby? And I understand that's also me being the only non-parent here. So that's like really easy for me to say, but like, I thought there was going to be a lot more of people being like, what are we doing? Like, and then at one point she comes out later and she's like, here's my baby. This is the baby I don't want to give up. I feel like it would be like, well, that's too bad for you. Cause I guess it's what you got to do to save the whole world. And it's like, but what if we move this like an egg? It's like, no, give up the baby. What are we talking about? And I think the idea that there's like this, like, I felt there was an implication that it's like, well, you can't do that because like then we don't know what kind of powers this kid will have. He may be more of a like beyond the fact we'd lose our baby. Like even if you don't care about this family, like this may become more of a threat down the road if we give him over. Like that's bad, and no negotiating with hostages, et cetera, something like that. It was really just like, I don't know, my baby, I don't want to give it up. And it's just like, okay, I get that, but like, what's the utilitarian argument that we're trying to make here? So that's where it fell off for me. I like the like admission of yes, like, there was an obvious answer and we turned it down and you're all mad at us about that. We get it. But then it kind of felt like that dynamic just sort of stayed where it was until everyone was like, I guess we're all just going to go underground and hope your planet moving thing works.
So, PT, imagine a trolley going down the tracks, and it's going to hit 6 billion people.
Yes.
But you could throw a switch and instead have it go down a side track and hit one baby. Are you throwing the switch?
What's a trolley?
Sorry, a space levitating hyper Mad Men trolley.
Well, I would tell the one person to get real low underneath the levitating part.
In this movie, it would be a monorail, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only thing that I think for me, well, I don't know. In general, okay, PT coming out as anti-baby.
At least I don't have to be worried about being anti-dog anymore. Like, I'm in the clear.
I wouldn't go that far, Greg.
You just did all of us a favor. I'm glad this is going to overshadow any other anti-something bit that we have. Hopefully. First of all, like, my perspective was the opposite. I was like, well, clearly she can't give up her baby. Like, that's ridiculous. So, for what that's worth. To me, that speech, which I think was like really hanging by a thread in terms of whether or not it was going to land the plane. But for me, it ultimately did, because when she says, I am not willing to sacrifice my son to save the world, but I'm not going to sacrifice the world to save my son, right? Or I'm not getting that exactly right. But like, she does kind of like a reverse logic of like that to say that they're not mutually exclusive, like that the fact that she doesn't want to give up her baby doesn't mean that she would like to doom the rest of the world, and that she's going to do everything that she can to save it, right? So to me, that was kind of where it kind of, that was the defense of like, why shouldn't we just kill this baby? I mean, I'm not into killing babies, so
well, I mean, it wasn't going to kill the baby. He was going to adopt the baby and make it an evil baby. That's very different.
Just I don't want the theme music, but just throw it in that speech boils down to, I will not sacrifice this planet for my baby, or my son for this planet, and I will not sacrifice this planet for my son. That's a chiasmus, which is one of my favorite rhetorical device names, just because it's really fun to say out loud. So that would be the same as ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, is the kind of classic example of that. And a quick Google also offered the example from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. If you can't be with the one you love, honey, love the one you're with, which I don't think is quite the same, but hey, why not? Let's just throw it in because that's what the internet says. So I mean, the part of that speech that really bummed me, or really felt unbelievable to me, is like some douchebag in that crowd is just grabbing the baby, right? Like, I like the idea.
I was very anxious during that scene for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea that they established that Sue is like a kind of Eleanor Roosevelt figure, right? Who like helped save the world and then founded the equivalent of the UN, which is also apparently who landed on the moon, right? The Future Foundation is the flag on the moon when Galactus flies over. So America didn't, the Future Foundation did. But don't worry, we still have Little Caesars pizza. Yeah, it was a little unbelievable to me. I got the kind of spirit of it. I do think in the Superman ate this movie's lunch, Superman did the like faux patriotism thing a little better than this movie did. So it just worked a little bit more. I still would say the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man kind of killed that lane for all of these movies, because I mean, yeah, I was ready to go enlist in something when I watched those movies, but like I just wanted a little. It didn't quite all come together, so I wanted a little bit more from that plot line.
I just really liked when they approached the mole man about evacuating everyone underground, and he's like really irritable, and he's like, I just need to talk to Sue. I thought Paul Walter Hauser did a really good job in that moment. I don't know. And they had like hinted at that she, like, they referenced very, very quickly earlier in the movie that she had worked with Mole Man to make peace with the
it's part of the news
nation,
right? It's part of that opening montage.
Yeah. So I like that they followed through on that.
Yeah. And I feel like all of this is a victim of the editing. It feels like what they did was they filmed a 2-hour and 45-minute or even a 3-hour movie, and then they were like, I don't know, that's a lot to ask of people, and also we only have X number of showings a day per screen, let's cut this down. And so I feel like the pieces make sense of like the trolley problem, and it being like, I'm sorry, we didn't make it clear. We're not assuming the world's we're working to figure out, I'm not sacrificing my son for the planet. I'm not sacrificing the planet for my son. Cool. But like, there's an immediate follow-up question that doesn't really happen in that scene, which is, so how are you going to do that? Or like, what are you doing? And it's like, well, we're working on it.
Our scientist singular is working on a plan.
Yeah. And the Hawkeye is deciphering some sort of a Rosetta Stone, but don't worry about that. And so, it feels like maybe there was more there that had more meat to it, in the same way that there's all these other little dangling threads that, get unwatered in this little garden of a movie.
Let's talk about Silver Surfer. So Jen, I don't know. I just had this random question on my mind of, when we see the Silver Surfer, I wonder about what her backstory might add to the film. But I also just want to shout out, it's Julia Garner, who is now having a great second weekend, not with this movie, but with Weapons. And I was, I've seen a lot of her movies in recent years. I had no idea this was her until they cut to the backstory. And I was like, Oh, that's who that is. And very superficially, I will say part of what makes her kind of a fascinating screen presence is her awesome hair. To like flatten it down and do a Silver Surfer space polymer blowout just didn't like at all keep her identity in my mind. So in terms of the backstory, I thought that was a little bit interesting. I think people who aren't on board with Jack Kirby crazy 70s comics have always had difficulty with Silver Surfer and Galactus. So I don't know enough about these characters to know if this was a completely unique backstory for Silver Surfer, but I did like that she had the turn as the hero at the end. I was rolling my eyes at the "tell baby Franklin his uncle loves him," and then I was surprised and thought it was fun that she knocked him out of the way and took the sacrifice.
Yeah, I in the other Fantastic Four movies we've gotten, I couldn't tell you a single thing about the Silver Surfer in those movies. It's to me the character has always been a pretty flat one in terms of like they just show up, they do some stuff, and then they leave, they float away, right? So I really liked that they sort of they tried to humanize the character a little bit more by by giving us this backstory and saying, they made a big sacrifice to save their own world, right? But they now carry the guilt of like all the devastation to all the other planets that they have enabled, right, by assisting Galactus. So, and I like that it became useful in the plot, right? The fact that Johnny figures that out and then leverages that to persuade Silver Surfer to kind of switch sides I thought was pretty effective and better than like and I think just looking at the character design of Silver Surfer, you cannot see the details of their face, right? And so like it makes it very difficult to relate or engage with that character at all unless the writing can support it. And so I do feel like that was a good move on their part. I felt like I've never really cared about Silver Surfer before, to be honest, and now I'm like, oh yeah, Silver Surfer. So I thought it added a lot.
So I guess that this is Silver Surfer's background. Like Silver Surfer has become Silver and surfs the galaxy for Galactus in exchange for the planet in the original character where he's a male. The character of Shala Bal, who is Julia Garner's character, is the like loved one that he saves. He saves his planet and he saves his loved one, but he is doomed to now have to go out and do all of this. So, there are comics where they have flipped that as sort of what if alternate reality thing. Don't worry. If you were like, whoa, I hope there were people who were mad that it was a woman as Silver Surfer. Don't worry. There were. But it is pulled from comics canon, especially, for better or for worse, we're in a multiverse zone in Marvel. So it's just like, this is another Earth. This is Earth, whatever the numbers are. So in that Earth timeline, Shala Bal's the one who makes the sacrifice. So I didn't know that. I literally looked it up while you were talking to be like, I knew that there was Shala Bal was Silver Surfer in one of the comics. I didn't realize this is the Silver Surfer canonical origin story. I think it worked great. I think it was presented well. I have not seen Julia Garner in a lot of things, but I thought that to the degree that anyone does a good job with the dots all over their face and then made to look like the inside of a thermometer, I think she did a great job doing that. And it was a cool character, and I was always happy when she was around.
I agree with that. I thought she was really terrific. I remember reading Silver Surfer in the comic books and really enjoying Silver Surfer as a comic book character. I also remember really loving Galactus as a comic book character. Part of that was like reading comic books. Part of the thrill was just like an incredibly powerful character. The more powerful, the more awesome, like the higher the stakes on reading, in reading in that form. But in the movies, I want to switch to Galactus now, because as a villain, as powerful and sort of like awesome as Galactus is, he's so powerful to the point where he's almost like boring to me in the way that like the best Marvel villains like Loki aren't, right? And so, the explanation for Galactus being Galactus and him doing what he's doing, basically being he has this sort of like cosmic hunger as a result of whatever. Fine, but there's no like reasoning with that, right? There's no whatever. And then the fact that you know that he's so powerful that he can't really be defeated, that you just have to like do all these weird things to just sort of like evade him, made that the last act of the movie for me feel a little less interesting than if the central villain had been actually been the Silver Surfer or something else. What did you all think about Galactus?
I spent a lot of time wondering if Galactus knew there was a celestial about to be born from the center of Earth in the Indian Ocean, which I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not true in this dimension as well, but they do have little Caesars, so I think maybe it is true. I think you read it exactly right. I think he's a little goofy, and that like I like that idea, and then we get this cool like destruction of this planet that they jump to, the one before Earth. And then it's like, but don't worry, this time I'm going to drive my ship really, really slow, and then I'm going to park and jump into the East River, I assume. I don't know, one of the rivers. And then I'm going to walk up because I kind of want the baby. And it's really hard to like, for me to kind of think about like, oh, I have to destroy planets, but also I can just jump down and like walk around. I know he's a beloved villain and kind of iconic in Marvel. My son has played many Marvel video games where he like flies little spaceships around Galactus's head and so on. So, but it was tough. I had heard it was said that there were a lot of practical effects for Galactus. I have no idea what that was, like what they did practically. Like it just kind of felt like all kind of CG to me. And
he's in makeup in the suit. Like that's actually him. Like I think they added like stuff around him, but like there's photos of just him sitting around in a big green screen and he's all dressed up looking like Galactus.
I mean, shout out, you couldn't pick a better voice right now than Ralph Ineson. Such a great voice, among the great kind of voice acting voices. You can't use a Morgan Freeman or a Samuel L. Jackson at this point, right? But so like, I feel like he's in that, or James Earl Jones has passed, but I feel like his voice is at that level.
My issue, which is completely if my underlying thing is how much of this is the movie's fault, how much of it is my fault. This is totally my fault. Is my exposure to Ralph Ineson began with the British version of The Office, which is my preferred version of The Office. He is David Brent's scuzzy boss friend who like David Brent always sucks up to, and he shows up and it's like, it's Finchy, and he always acts like he's my guy, we're such buddies. He doesn't care really about him, and so that's all I hear is whenever Ralph Ineson shows up. This happened in The Witch, this happened, I think he's in one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but like whenever he shows up in something, I'm always like, oh, it's Finchy. And I'm focused on that instead of him being this like great voice that's like intimidating. And so he just seemed like a upper middle manager from the middle of England in Galactus to me. And that's not fair to him. He's a great performer. And he does great work. But like, yeah, it undermined the threat of Galactus when I realized who was doing the voice. It also, separate from that, there's a little bit of, I feel like this is to get maybe too meta, but to throw this in here. Greg, you had your theory about the pandemic, that people came back or people had the time to sit and catch up on Marvel. Maybe this is my own bias. I think a lot of people were around and they kind of got scooped up in the Marvel movies as they went on, and during the 2010s kind of got on board and were like, okay. And, it was all building up to the big Thanos showdown in Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. And Marvel fans got trained to watch things a certain way. And they got trained to be like, okay, whatever's happening is going to be cool and fun. And there's going to be these little jokes and there's going to be these action scenes, and that's fine. But really, you're here to figure out what are the pieces being laid out for what's coming next. And so where are things coming down the road? And we're building to this big showdown. And after Endgame, Marvel has really like been spinning out, trying to figure out how do you provide to that audience who's looking for that without rushing to get to the end point that initially took you whatever it was, 20 something movies and 15 years, no more than not that much, 11 years to get from Iron Man to Endgame. And I think the multiverse has been a big problem with that, because then they can be like, here's all these Easter eggs from other things and other movies or things we're hinting at, and they don't matter. Don't worry about it. Like, those people are dead. Or actually, like, whatever happens here, the consequence doesn't matter because we're going to skip to a different universe. And I think similarly, like, this is getting to what should be the culminating villain of the third movie in the Fantastic Four trilogy, is like the big villain is Galactus, who's been coming. Like, Silver Surfer showed up halfway through the first movie to be like, hey, in like 5 years, your planet's going to get eaten. Like, get ready for that. And they're trying to figure out what to do over the course of all these other movies while other stuff is happening. And instead, they're like, well, we got to get to Galactus. People want Galactus. And so part of me, to go back to why didn't people show up, part of me is wondering if the fact this stands on its own and the fact it has the like huge dominant villain of this group, and he's not eradicated. Like, he's definitely on the shelf for another day. He's just in another part of the galaxy. He'll make his way back, I'm sure. But like, the people who went to go see it and then told their friends who like Marvel movies but don't go all the time, when those friends asked, oh, do I need to see this? It's like, nah, there's nothing that's being set up for the future, and the big villain is a nothing burger. So I think that's the problem with Galactus, is he just kind of is there. Like, he's rushed in and then rushed out. And if you don't know, you don't have that history of caring from the comics, he seems inconsequential.
But based on the stinger for this movie, you could argue that Galactus is not actually going to be, right? I mean, he doesn't have an Avengers movie named after him coming out.
That's
right?
True. And yeah, but I mean, in theory, you could have had of the Avengers movies building up to Doctor Doom and the Fantastic Four building up to that.
Yeah.
I will also say, in thinking about that character, if they had shown Robert Downey Jr.'s face in the end credits, it adds $50 million to the box office of this movie.
But also adds how much to the
gross, because that gets people to tell their friends, you got to go to see the stinger before people tell you what it is, because they're not watching all the Comic-Con announcements. They're not following the spoiler subreddits. It would be a surprise to, I think, most people that is who's playing that role. And if you showed his face, that would have felt like that's that trinket that is promising something for the future, that gets people into the theater to see it before, like Greg said, the social media account posts the video of it on Monday afternoon.
We can skip thesis, please, because it's family. It's pure Olive Garden. I think this doesn't have like deep things to say about it, but just like family matters, like the end. Mm-hmm. So Jen, you can maybe cut this out. We don't need to narrate to them, but
and the whole world is a family, Greg. Like, you missed that part.
Yeah,
a less
heroes
important
are family with
a
the
secondary
world.
Family to these 5 people.
I actually didn't really mean that sarcastically. That worked on me. I don't know. I was like, we are all a family. Like, but it's also like, to me, there's a certain like utopian unrealism to that, right? Like I think Antonio alluded to it earlier. Like, that this is a universe in which, or this is a version of Earth in which everyone says, like, in a very kind of like, retro wartime way, like, they're like, wait, we all need to band together to save the Earth? Great. We will put all of our political differences aside and come together as a globe, and not as a series of countries that make the globe. Right. So, like, I do think that to me, that was kind of a fun fantasy to engage in, to be like, oh, what if all the countries in the world could just like get along and get stuff done? That would be really nice. And that like our leaders would like try to do whatever they could to be in our best interest. And, it's like, yeah, there's like kind of like a wholesome naivete to it that I personally enjoyed, because it was like a nice, oh, that sounds nice. But anyway, so I don't know how nerdy we want to get with this, but what the big question I think that we're bringing up here is, what role is this movie going to play in building the MCU's future? Because I do agree that based on what we see here, it is very vague and there's no way to really tell. It's not doing the thing of like pointing over there, right? It's not being like, hey, there's a thing coming. We're teasing this, right? Other than Dr. Doom approaching Franklin at the end. But I think there's a lot of questions surrounding like, well, which Dr. Doom is this? Like, is the Dr. Doom that is going to be leading the main antagonist in the Doomsday Avengers movie? Is that this one or is this a different one? Which one's going to be Robert Downey Jr., right? Because they didn't show his face, but then there was like a press release that said it was him in the suit. But then I read other stuff where it's like they're trying to like leave their options open in terms of casting somebody else so that Robert Downey Jr. doesn't have to do this for the next 20 years. So as a different character. So I don't know. That was a lot of like messy thoughts, but like, what do you feel like this indicates about the future of the MCU and kind of where we're headed with it? Also, did you notice that the chair from Latveria was empty? And that's where Dr. Doom.
That's a great level. That's a great level Easter egg at the beginning and made me surprised. So Jen, you just gave us a rich constellation of like crazy things about that final thing. So if there's anybody listening who doesn't know, so we know that there is a version of Dr. Doom that has had Robert Downey Jr. cast to play him. And then in the stinger scene, the mid-credits scene at this movie, they show presumably Dr. Doom. And we know this because, among other reasons, because in the listing of tracks, Alan Silvestri is credited with the Doom theme song from Avengers Doomsday because Alan Silvestri's recording. This is exactly what happened at Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts, if you weren't sure what you were about to see for the stinger scene, you got the Michael Giacchino Fantastic Four First Steps theme song in the track listing as well. Mm-hmm. So that's at play here. Again, you're right. We were told this was Robert Downey Jr. on set. I have not heard if Matt Shankman directed this. Has that been confirmed? Because often it is the next director who directs these scenes. So Jen's going to Google that. So to me, I think where this is pointing is like, surprise, it's going to be Doom, unless you're one of our hardcore fans who already knew that. And guess who's left? Only the hardcore fans. So it was a little bit of a letdown. I also, and I guess PT earmuffs, because you might need spoilers for Thunderbolts. The end scene of Thunderbolts, the after credit scene or the mid credit scene, doesn't at all gel with this movie. And I did already see that Matt Shankman came out and said, oh yeah, I didn't know that scene existed. I didn't know what that scene was before I made my whole movie and all this. So all of that to me, with my much beloved Marvel, is pointing more to Harry Styles, Patton Oswalt bonus scene than it is, or sorry, maybe that's a little mean, pointing to Mahershala Ali's voice off screen as Blade final scene than it is to something they've actually thought through, like they used to really tease something like directly coming. I don't understand how these pieces fit together. I think at the end of Thunderbolts, Jen and I, we speculated the Fantastic Four is going to lose and they're going to have to abandon their dimension. PT alluded to it here. It seems like if they wanted the Fantastic Four to be in a rocket ship to a new dimension, there were moments in this movie like, yeah, throw the baby in the spaceship and go to another dimension. Like, why are we moving the Earth? And maybe that will work. But like, they clearly didn't take those opportunities. So I don't know how this all comes together. 828-616, also wherever the X-Men are. I don't know. And it feels
don't even
to
bring
me,
in the X-Men.
I mean, we have to, because they showed us the chairs.
We're like,
they
why are
had
you
chairs on set, Jen? There were so many chairs. Did you see the chairs?
There were a lot of chairs.
So, like, we need a Pedro Pascal giant blackboard and stretchy arms to figure it all out. And again, I loved this movie. I love Marvel in general. I'm at a place where I just need to let go and let them do it and
ride
not
the wave.
Think too hard about it, because it's not going to add up right. And unfortunately, is my feeling.
My very cursory research reveals that Matt Shackman said that he did not film that scene, and it was in fact the Russo brothers. So that would indicate that that's the tease of Avengers Doomsday, and that poor baby Franklin is going to be involved somehow. But yeah, so the thing I would guess is that this version of the Fantastic Four become like the we've been there group. You know what I mean? Like oftentimes in superhero movies, when you do team ups, it's like the main characters in a movie, like in this case the Avengers, have a problem or there's some pending disaster, and then you bring in this other group to be like, oh, we also dealt with this and let us help you, like let us share our knowledge. So like that would something like that would make the most sense to me, that they either that or Reed Richards realizes that either Galactus or Doom or some threat is threatening all of the Earths. And so then, because he does mention, like in one of the little, like he's teaching kids science or something, you know what I mean? Like he does talk about the multiverse.
Incursions.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that would make sense that Reed Richards makes some realization, and then he says, okay, everybody, we got to go save not just our world, but all the worlds. And then it's more of an outreach program where they're like, hey, do you know that there's this threat coming for you? We're here to help. But yeah,
listeners who can't see the video, PT just fell over dead just listening to Jen and I talk about those things.
No, I've been waiting to try to say do you mean Kang the Conqueror? The guy who's going to threaten all the parts of the multiverse? Like he's coming back, right? No?
In Dreams, now streaming. That's where you can see Kang the Conqueror.
Oh, is it?
Probably.
Wait, is it streaming somewhere?
It got a theatrical release, and then
I know that.
It got PVOD, so
okay.
It's out there. You can
it's
find
out there.
Antonio, do you have anything to add here?
I do not. I have. Yeah,
it's okay. I didn't want to step on you in case you did, but what I will say is I do think they started planning all of this when they still thought that Kang the Conqueror was going to be a thing.
You're right.
And so that's an issue. Jonathan Majors, bad guy. We'll see if his redemption gets far enough along, then Marvel gets desperate enough that they're just like, he's back. But I doubt it. So I do feel like there's going to be some reason why this group has to go over to our regular group, our regular timeline. I didn't want to think that this was all a big mistake, but I do think the multiverse thing has been a real trap that it's quicksand. They keep sinking in. So I don't know exactly how they're going to work all that out. But, I think there is a degree to which, while they didn't approach it this way, and I don't think the movie, even though it had that drop off, even though in the box office, even though maybe, it's the herald of a new reality, that there's only the hardcore fans show up, but there's still a lot of hardcore fans. So don't spend $500 million making these movies and they'll still be profitable. So, maybe it's saying all of that, but if they wanted to, they could treat this like the Eternals. It could just be like, well, we did that. No one cared. We can just leave them in their own little pocket, occasionally reference it, and maybe bring them back every once in a while. I assume they're not going to do that. And so I will try to say something that's relatively positive. Although as I say that, I realize maybe this won't be that positive, but like my memory of all of the beginning of all of this, the first phase of the Marvel movies was Iron Man came out and it was really fun and everyone had a really good time. And then like 6 to 8 weeks later, The Dark Knight came out and everyone was like, well, whatever about Iron Man. Like, we love The Dark Knight, but like, it was there and it was fine. And then it was like, it's cool. They're going to try to build up these movies over time. And then no other movies were that good until we got to the Avengers. And I know that maybe that's me having a bad opinion. Like, people disagree. Some people love that first Captain America movie. There's things to love about the first Thor. Some people like Edward Norton as the Incredible Hulk. But I was just sort of like, oh, okay, this is diminishing returns. Like, that's not as fun. And then when the Avengers came, it was like, actually, that was all worth it. Because all that, we don't need that backstory now. You can learn all of them in these other movies. We can just really hit the ground running, and we can have this like great moment in the Avengers movies. And so maybe that's part of what this is it's like, we get our Fantastic Four, we set them up for people, and then when they hit in Doomsday in the Avengers movie, boom, it's going to be great. Now, the issue is the characters were not particularly well defined in this movie, as we were discussed. So I don't know if they're going to, have as much sort of background momentum or backstory momentum into that movie. But it's possible that like all of this was just sort of like, we gave them a little thing and you get to have a little fun and it stands out on its own, but like they're really going to be crucial and important next time when the time comes for them to show up with everyone else, however that happens.
I will only toss in from that big ranging Kevin Feige interview, which is worth the read if you are at the Jen and Greg level of this stuff. He gave off big, it's not you, it's me energy, saying they were already moving away from Kang before the legal troubles of Jonathan Majors happened, that they'd already pretty much decided Kang wasn't a big enough deal. Very funny set of quotes that people should check out, because
I don't believe that for a second.
And then he also just PT mentioned the cost of these. Just because it's a previous long take review show, he talked about how they went and talked to the special effects crew from The Creator, the Gareth Edwards movie, because Gareth Edwards, figured out this method to do it very cheap. And I think that's why he got the new Jurassic Park. I actually don't know about the budget of the new Jurassic Park, but I think they took advantage of some of those some things, but Marvel recognizes, like exactly like PT said, if these are cheaper, then they don't have to make $1 billion. And then the last thing, and I don't know if this will encourage or discourage faithful listeners, Kevin Feige points out that they'll get through the second of these Avengers movies. I'm forgetting whatever the subtitle is. There's Doomsday, and then there's something else. And he says that is then finally the hard reset, where they will begin recasting and getting rid of the old actors and so on. So so don't expect new X-Men until that movie. It's still going to be a armored truck backing
Secret
up to
Wars,
Hugh Jackman's house. Secret Wars, yes, yeah. Not Secret Invasion, but Secret Wars. And then that'll be like the potential to get new everybody's, like they'll return to Iron Man and do a new Tony Stark perhaps or something. So if you're fatigued of this, it kind of sounded to me in his quotes like that's really the end of whatever this first MCU has been. So we'll see. I don't know.
Let me ask this question, because it's been kicking around the back of my mind since Greg mentioned the sort of like, Marvel has had issues, Pixar's had issues. And that, if Star Wars hasn't had box office issues because they haven't released movies. So, the last Star Wars movie came out the same year that Endgame came out. What if this was if this movie came out now and it was the first Marvel movie since Endgame? What do you think people's reaction would be?
More positive. I think that would be my headline. I think people have gotten very frustrated with falling in love with characters that don't appear again by going to something like Brave New World, which is clearly slapdash and like just a mess of editing. So, I think I liked Black Widow, but Black Widow slowed people down because it was like, oh, we've already lost this character. What? It's out of chronological order, all that. I don't know. I don't think Marvel is innocent in the problems that have happened to them. I think they moved way too quickly. I think, I was just, again, watching the new season of The Bear, and a beloved Marvel actress shows up, and you realize like, oh, this person is actually talented, but Marvel chewed her up and spit her out with no support, and the fan community tore her to shreds. And she is now seemingly running as far from Marvel as she possibly can. And it's like, Marvel's not innocent in that. They didn't stand up for their talent. They didn't, admit when they made the mistakes. They kind of let the talent take the blame. So, that feels so unsatisfying to not say her name, but I think people will figure it out if they.
That wedding episode is the best. It's so good,
and she's great. So to me, it's like. I think Marvel, even though Kevin Feige's interview felt like a little bit of a mea culpa, things aren't going exactly right. It was much more, when somebody slips and falls and they get like halfway down where there's no chance they're going to stand back up, but they're still doing the like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like they'll find that perfect arm position to stand. It felt a little more like that than like I have a clear, sure vision of what's ahead.
I think ultimately, PT, the answer to your question really heavily relies on what comes next. And but I do feel like they are trying to recapture that feeling of no, like we have a plan and we're going to sprinkle seeds. I do think that, because the endpoint does seem to be Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, like that's not far away, right? Like that's only a couple movies away. I do think because that it's going to be weird because the runway is much shorter than from Iron Man to Endgame. But I do think that if we had immediately started with this and they did the thing with the chairs and they did the they're teasing stuff like teasing things that actually could be in the next movie, right? Like they did with Thunderbolts. So maybe what I'm saying is like Black Widow, we time travel Black Widow before Endgame and then Thunderbolts and then this right after. I do think people would not be doubting it as much because it would feel like a familiar serialized through multiple movies storytelling tactic. But I think people's main complaint is that they were expecting that and Marvel didn't bother to tell anybody, no, we're going to do this multiverse thing and we're going to try all these new characters and we don't necessarily have to unify all of them into one cross movie plot line. But what they didn't realize is that's what people want from them. So right. So now they're just doing it now, after the fact, right? I think their misinterpretation was that multiversal storytelling, they thought of as boundless, and we interpret it as shapeless. So I think that's the problem. It's like it's a communication problem primarily. So that's I would say that like I think if we get a mini version of like like we're teasing things and everything comes together and then we get a bunch of team ups of the last 5 movies or whatever, like I think that sounds good. I'll be there anyway, let's be honest. But
response to PT and then to Greg's summary of sort of the plan after Secret Wars is that I think that in order to restart you have to go away. Right? Like the ending, it's not just about an ending, it's also about like time. I think to develop interesting ideas, but also to just sort of like let something sit for a bit and then regain the appetite for it. To me, the way my experience of Marvel is that it's sort of like dispersed and then faded. And what I think is happening now feels less like a restart and more like a refocusing, which I think is a good thing, in that a lot of the things that I sort of interpreted as like, this is getting too complicated and I'm not sure that I care anymore, that they've sort of like made strategic choices and curated and said like, okay, fine, we'll get rid of that, focus here. And so I think that's to its benefit that drew me back. I'm watching and I'll continue to watch these Avengers movies. But after I watched the Secret Wars, and I'm in for those things, it's not like this idea of like, well, we're going to recast and we're going to do all these things again. I'm not necessarily on board with all of that stuff. Like that's not like a hunger that I have. It's not like, oh, I can't wait to see another interpretation of Iron Man. How do you all feel about that?
Alden Ehrenreich, young Tony Stark, done. What could possibly go wrong?
Somebody hasn't
watched
Ironheart. Boo, 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 sir, I say.
I honestly don't know. I don't know. I forgot Ironheart existed.
It's okay. It's all right. It wasn't that good. It was okay. It was better than people are saying, but still wasn't very good. Okay. But yeah, Alden. So that you can't just be like throwing out spoilers about that. A show no one has seen.
I didn't think it was spoilers. I was thinking you can't recast characters that you people love. You can't just recast them. And then run out.
The actor you chose to create that example has recently appeared as a.
Technically, Lord and Miller chose him. It's not my fault.
I think that is exactly right. So actually, this is so silly, but I was just Googling a second ago when I referenced the 50th Doctor Who special. It reminded me that Mark Gatiss is a writer on Doctor Who, and he appears as Ted Gilbert in this movie. Yeah. So I was like, oh, wouldn't that be funny if they ripped off one of his episodes? But he is not a credited writer of the 50th. But the big headlines that came up were like, maybe Doctor Who should go away for a little while again. And like, I actually think that aligns with what you said, which is like, I do think we get spoiled by having everything we love coming at us 3 times a year forever. And I think, part of why Deadpool and Wolverine was so successful last year is it was fun, but also it was the only one, and it didn't feel like a lot of work. So I think absolutely a couple years away before you try to reboot those characters. The other thing is, I think probably my history is faulty, but like when you recast James Bond, it wasn't very easy to watch the other James Bonds in those moments, even up to like Daniel Craig. It still wasn't the easiest thing in the world to watch all the Bond movies. Much easier by Daniel Craig than some of the other recastings. But it's like the problem with this is the MCU doesn't go away. It's a tile on your Disney Plus that you open all the time. My son was just like, Dad, I really want to watch Multiverse of Madness. And I was like, okay, I don't know why that one, but yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And so like, it is a fact of our modern media landscape that these things don't go away, and it always feels like it's there and present, and your homework's there, and it recommends 5 shows. I just ragged on PT. I haven't watched the new animated Black Panther show yet. It's been like 2 or 3 weeks because it's like it's just there's always more, and it's always present, and it always feels like work. So I think going away would be smart. I also think maybe don't try to connect everything because I do think the population we haven't talked about is like the people who saw, say, Shang-Chi and we're like, Shang-Chi is awesome, like this actor is awesome, let's see him again. No follow-up movie, no word, no chair. I don't think he got a chair.
He had a chair.
Did Simu Liu get a chair? I don't know, but it's like that burns just as much as I didn't watch that TV show is like, I did watch this and I loved it, and then I never heard what happened to that character. All the Eternals heads out there, they're here, they're still listening to the pod.
He had a chair.
Okay.
Apparently he didn't know about it until he watched the thing and he was like, oh
yeah, sure. I was going through sort of this like, what happened, because like I don't remember thinking at Endgame, like, I'm done. Like, I had friends, I knew people who were like, this was great, I need to stop for myself and not be part of this content machine. But I was like, nope, keep it coming. I'm loving this. This is great. It's just like reading comics. Keep releasing more. And I remember like, I mean, I didn't see Shang-Chi in the theater because it was still like COVID-y time when it came out, but like having a great time with Shang-Chi. Like, not that it was like the best, but it was like, I was not like, this is a problem. And I like Shang-Chi and hope that it comes back. And I did diagnose that the problem is it's just like reading comics. And in the same way that I went from having a pull list to buying collected anthologies to not reading them anymore, that's kind of what's happened with comic book movies, where I'm like, okay, I get it. I see what's happening. Like I need a break. And it's probably not good for the Disney bottom line for them to have taken a break. But I do wonder if they really took like 4 or 5 years off, I think they could come back and blow everyone away, kind of in the way that Superman did after. I mean, how long has it been since the Snyder Cut? It's only been 4 years, I guess. And that was only online. So like it was, not that many years, but a few years since there was a Superman on the big screen. And it felt like, God, where's he been? He's back. And I think that Marvel could also do that. Maybe.
I mean, Star Wars is going to be a big test on that, right? Because Star Wars has been present, but like, I do think they're going to watch next May and be like, whatever the reasons behind the Star Wars movie theater break have been, I think they'll be like, okay, maybe this. I suspect that for many reasons, the next Star Wars movie will do very well, and I think it's that, even though it's TV characters coming in, but people have missed it. People show up in droves to see these prequel movie re-releases, so I think they'll show up for that. Sorry, Jen.
It's okay. I was just gonna say we can probably skip Oscars watch because the only thing this might be eligible for would be like a visual effects, but I feel like we've already had other movies that are probably going to crowd it out. I don't know.
It probably needed to make more money for it to be like
that true, yeah,
prominent in the discussion.
Yeah. So
only thing in
R.I.P.
my notes we didn't get to, shout out to Sarah Niles, who randomly showed up in F1 and then showed up here and somehow had even less to do. I don't, dangling plots. Also, shout out, John Malkovich was in this movie at one point, and I'm
that's
fascinated
right.
to know that backstory.
He just totally got cut out. Yep.
The first fight was going to be him as a supervillain, but instead of the montage, it was going to be a action scene. Red
That's
Ghost,
crazy.
I think, is the name.
Yeah, that sounds great.
There's-
So if they come out with like an extended cut of this movie, I'm watching it. Like,
100%. Just like you watched Vanessa Kirby's extended cut of Napoleon, you'll line up right.
I was
for
trying
Vanessa
to figure out
Kirby's
the way of saying that was my immediate reaction. I was like, I absolutely would too. Except I've not fulfilled that promise before.
And shout out to Anthony, who keeps telling me the director's cut of Napoleon is really good. So
okay.
he's on that side. He thinks we should watch it.
I did say I needed someone to tell me it was good, and so now I have heard that. So maybe I have to watch it. Happened.
All right, and Antonio, I think we've made you suffer long enough. Tell folks where they can find you, and I think there's only one place.
You can find me on Letterboxd at Aelefano, AELEFANO. Greg, where can they find you?
People can find me on Letterboxd at IonCanon, EYEONCANON. Specific shout out to me somehow gaining about 150 Letterboxd followers in recent weeks. That maybe not quite that many, like 100. I don't know what happened. I really don't. I think maybe my review of Fantastic Four got picked up somewhere, but I haven't determined yet. So if you started following me on Letterboxd, please message me and tell me why, because I don't understand. PT, where can people find you?
Can you send messages on Letterboxd? I actually don't know if you can do that.
You can comment on people's reviews.
That's true.
So
leave a comment on Greg's reviews. And then you can also go and follow me on Letterboxd at PT McNiff, PTMCNIFF. But more importantly, follow the show on Letterboxd at LTR Pod. You can also look for us on other social media sites like Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at The Long Take Review. You can send us an email at thelongtakereview@gmail.com. But most importantly, you can just subscribe and follow the show wherever you get your podcast, wherever you're listening right now. You can subscribe then. Jen, where can folks find you? And now that we're very deep in this episode, who should we give a shout out to? Some new people that you smartly have brought aboard with your producer brain and your programming skills.
Well, so I was going to say big news for the Long Take Review. We got our first ever listener email. PT has been telling people we have an email address since we started the show.
I wasn't going to give away how little interaction we get from people we don't already know.
It's exciting. I don't know. We should be excited. We don't need to front.
We could pretend
whatever.
that we get more than just the letterbox rushes in that email account.
But yeah, shout out to the listener who sent a very long take. It was a long take in its own right. A wonderfully thoughtful email about our K-pop Demon Hunters episode, which you can check out in our feed. And thanks again to Hasib and Anne for really bringing it and bringing the cultural perspective. Hasib, as always, bringing his incisive analysis and enthusiasm. So if you haven't, don't sleep on. You have no excuse anymore. I'm looking at you, PT. Don't sleep on K-pop Demon Hunters.
I'm sleeping.
Be part of the moment. Join us. And also our YouTube channel, which PT never actually plugs. The K-pop Demon Hunters episode has skyrocketed in views in comparison to our other episodes. So we're giving the people what they want. It's great. But you can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Sopchockchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI. And you can find me on Letterboxd at Qui-Gon Jinn. I think that's it.
Say it, Jen. Say it. Say it. What time is it?
It's clobbering time.
Yay.
Or it's quitting time. It's quitting time.
It's dinner time.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks for listening. You can follow The Long Take Review on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free, and you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops. You'll also receive written reviews of new films with Oscar buzz, as well as any new installments of pop franchises like Star Wars and Marvel.